All right, everyone. Thank you, and appreciate everybody joining us today for our April chapter meeting. Uh, our agenda pretty much follows the same script that we've been doing. A few announcements at the very beginning. Tonight's speaker is Jason Ferguson. Afterwards, we'll talk a little bit about the drive-through event that we're having this Saturday, along with the advanced training and volunteer opportunities that have been posted out on our website. We do want to begin with just simply having to say farewell to one of our members. As we all know, Virginia Vineyard passed away. Um, we found these pictures that were in some of the scrapbooks that we had. And I think every time I saw Virginia, she was always smiling. And it's a unfortunate loss for us. I think she's going to be missed by so many of us. She was one of the ones that welcomed me. She taught science, as some of you know, and then once she found out that I taught science, it was the first year of me teaching science when I met her, and it was great to laugh with somebody making fun of kids, how crazy they can be in the classroom, and it was really nice to have somebody that I could talk to and made me feel welcome uh, in our chapter. So unfortunately, we lost Virginia. Her services will be this Saturday. I believe there's a visitation at 1 p.m. and then a memorial service at 2 p.m. this Saturday at Tomei Garza in San Benito off of San Houston. I do want to share something this is something that we've seen working on um, before. This is the pamphlet that we were working on to help with the Pelican issue out on Highway 48 and 100. And I wanted to share an update, partly because not only is it something that's happening, but this would have been something that I think Virginia would have really liked. Because what the committee has done is basically say, you know what, let's work with the Port Isabel High School art department and have them create a Pelican mascot for our material. And this is just such a neat idea. And I think from knowing Virginia, being a teacher and stuff, she would have liked if any opportunity that we had as a chapter to engage students, I think she would have really enjoyed something like that. And so our committee has come up with this idea. And for the students who are going to design this, we as a chapter are going to give them a $50 gift card, and the Port Isabel Art League is going to give them $150. So for these high school students, given a chance to participate, to compete, to create a piece of artwork for us, I think is a fantastic idea. Um, they're going to have a reception for the winner. Diane was letting us know that they're going to choose or collect the samples on the 28th of this month. And then for that, I think that's a Thursday, so that weekend they will select a winner and we'll have a reception for the winner on May 8th. Great idea. This is something that hopefully we can use as a model for other efforts, for other outreach efforts, whatever they might be. And for some of us, maybe this is sort of gets our creative juices going as far as what else can we do. This is just one great effort that some of our new class of 2021 are doing. And I think this is a fantastic idea. And this to me is a great way to engage students at any level. Because if we can attract them and get them interested in some of these things, then they'll bring their parents along. I also wanted to make sure everybody's aware that the City Nature Challenge is getting closer. It's a couple of weeks now. It will take place before our next chapter meeting. Um, I know that Tira has sent out an email and posted on Facebook with regards to some of the parks that we can target. Again, April 30th through May 3rd is when we go out there and try to make observations, followed by May 4th through May 9th is when these are uploaded into iNaturalist. And then this is where if you're talented and an expert at identifying plants, insects, bugs, you name it, this is when we can validate what the observations are. So this is the City Nature Challenge that's coming up pretty soon. Okay, and that moves us on to our guest speaker for tonight. First of all, I want to apologize for Jason. I found this video where Jason was interviewed regarding I believe there was the lionfish, uh, maybe not quite an invasion at the time, but I know they were starting to report the presence of the lionfish. And so I found this picture. So Jason, I apologize if this isn't the best picture, but it's a great interview, and it lets us know some of the things that you do in the department. To introduce Jason, Jason Ferguson is currently the ecosystems leader for the Texas Parks and Wildlife Coastal Fisheries of the Lower Laguna Madre Field Station. He has been with Texas Parks and Wildlife for just over 8 years and has served in his current position for the past 6 years. He is originally from Virginia and graduated with his Bachelor's of Science in Biology from Longwood University, and then went on to obtain a Master's of Science degree in Oceanography from Old Dominion University. He has always been an avid fisherman, and that interest led him to pursue a career in marine fisheries management. He thoroughly enjoys working for Texas Parks and Wildlife and takes pride in the role he plays in helping to conserve our marine natural resources for future generations to enjoy. So we welcome Jason to our meeting. And Jason, I am going to make you the presenter.
All right, thank you so much, Robert. I apologize in advance. I don't have the best connection here. I think just because there's so many people on here, that seems the audio seems to keep coming in and out. So just bear with me if you have a hard time hearing me or seeing me. And I guess we can use the chat too if we need to. If we have issues, but hopefully. I stay connected through the presentation. Let me see if I can get it shared.
Okay, we'll see your presentation.
All right, so y'all can see that all right?
Yes.
All right. Yeah. All right. Again, I'm Jason Ferguson. I'm the ecosystem leader here for the Texas Parks and Wildlife Coastal Fisheries Lower Laguna Madre Field Station here in Brownsville. And so I got a few things we'll be discussing today. One, I'll just kind of go over an overview of what our division does and go over the types of gears that we use to sample, and I'll also review some of the data for some of our popular recreational species such as spotted sea trout, red drum, and flounder. After that, I'll also talk a little bit about the freeze event that occurred this past February and how that impacted the Laguna Madre. And then also after that, talk a little bit about just the facility itself, the idea that Robert and I have been discussing a little bit for a little project here at our facility. All right, so for the Coastal Fisheries Division, it consists of 8 different field systems up and down the coast. There's also 3 saltwater hatcheries that produce primarily red drum and spotted sea trout. Last year, the hatcheries produced over 15 million red drum and I think I want to say around 5 million spotted sea trout. There's a couple of the facilities have also started raising southern flounder. They've been kind of experimenting with it and kind of fine tuning that method, and so we're hoping the few coming years we can start raising even more of those flounder as well. We also have a research facility, the Perry R. Bass Research Facility, that's in Palacios, Texas, and they're responsible for our agent growth studies as well as genetics studies on the fish here in our bay. So, what are our goals for coastal fisheries? It's primarily there's a lot of users of our bays and estuaries, and so we're trying to manage the resources for the over 1.6 million anglers and 10 million consumers of these marine natural resources, and trying to conserve them for future generations to enjoy. So how do we accomplish these goals? Well, we got two main monitoring programs that we utilize, and these programs have been in place for over 40 years. So we actually have the longest continuous running database in the entire country when it comes to fisheries data. So we have our resource monitoring program, which is our fishery independent sampling program. This is kind of gives us an idea of species composition as well as the size and relative abundance. And we also have our harvest monitoring program. This is our fishery dependent sampling program, which relies on commercial and recreational fishermen to obtain our data. And this gives us an idea of what and how many and where they're caught. So some of the gears we use as part of our resource monitoring program is gill nets. This assesses the adult and subadult population. There's two 10-week periods, one in the spring and one in the fall. And there's the basically entire bay system is separated into 1 mile by 1 mile grids, and those grids are randomly selected for sampling each season. And there's 45 nets for each 10-week season. Additionally, these nets are set right before sunset and picked up pretty much right after sunrise, and that way their nets are pretty much soaking overnight and minimizing any impacts or conflicts with recreational boaters out of the water. Another type of sampling that we do, sampling gear we use are bag seines. This helps us to assess the juvenile fish, shrimp, and crabs. These are 50-foot seines that are pulled parallel with the shoreline, and so it just kind of it gives us an idea of reproductive success. It also allows us to see what the future may hold. Obviously, if you see a bump in if you see an above average catches of juvenile spotted sea trout in a particular year, you can expect that you'll see a bump in your gill nets a couple years later once those fish have reached maturity. Again, just like with gill nets, the grids are randomly selected. We do 25 samples per month, and this type of sampling is conducted year round. Right. Another type of resource gear we use for resource monitoring are bay and Gulf trawls. This kind of is primarily used for assessing shrimp abundance and size composition. However, we also catch crabs and juvenile and subadult finfish as well. This varies a little bit among bay systems. Our bay system does 10 trawls per month year round, and there's also Gulf trawls that 5 of the 8 field stations utilize and we're one of them. So we do have our own 45-foot research vessel that we collect our 16 golf trawls from. And then there's also some field stations use oyster dredges. Obviously, we don't use those down here. This is primarily used up the coast from Rockport on north to Port Arthur. And again, these are 20 samples per month, primarily targeting oysters. And they use this sampling data to basically when to open and close a particular area for commercial harvest based on the number and percentage of harvest size oysters. And then our harvest monitoring program primarily consists of our recreational surveys. If you're an avid fisherman, I'm sure you've seen us out at the numerous boat ramps down here. These allows us to kind of get an estimate of recreational harvest. Commercial fishermen, they're required to report everything that they catch, and we utilize that data as well. But recreational anglers are not required, and so these surveys give us an idea of what's being taken out of the system recreationally. And so sites, boat ramps all up and down the coast are randomly selected by day. So we do weekday surveys and weekend surveys. And then the sites, the ramps are weighted by pressure. So the busier sites typically get surveyed more often, and it gives us a more accurate estimate of total fish harvest. So now let's look at some of the data for gill nets. This is for spotted sea trout, going back to 1983. And you can see it's been fairly stable over the years. There was kind of a decrease from the 90s down to about 2006. But you can see since then it's been increasing again, and I think a lot of that can be attributed to some of those stricter regulations that were put in place, including like the only one fish over 25-inch rule. And then in 2007, the Lower Laguna Madre implemented the the 5-fish bag limit. We were the first area to implement the 5-fish bag limit, and I think that's really helped out the fishery some as well. And now we can take a look at our bag seine catches for spotted sea trout. Again, going back to the early 80s. You can see here in the last 15 or so years, we've seen a pretty dramatic increase in the number of juvenile sea trout we're catching in our bag seines. And again, this is a very good sign that the fishery will remain sustainable and healthy for the upcoming years. Looking at angler catch rates for spotted sea trout over the years. It's fairly stable, but there may be a slight decrease in numbers over the years. And again, that can be primarily attributed to increased regulations. So obviously, the less fish people are allowed to keep and increasing the minimum size, that you're just going to naturally have less harvest. And I would say in the more recent years, just anecdotally from my own observations down here, there's a lot more anglers out there now that are very conservation minded and really advocate for catch and release. And I've seen a lot more and more. It seems like every year, anglers that I interact with when I'm at boat ramps or out fishing myself, that they're really conservation minded. Now let's look at some red drum. So red drum kind of increased at first and then decreased a little bit from about 2007 to about 2013. But since in the last 5 years or so, it's really picked back up again. You can see even in 2019, we had some of the highest catch rates on record. And then looking at the bag seine data, you can see again fairly stable over the years. But since the early 2000s, it's been pretty steadily increasing. And then look at 2019, we had this huge jump in the number of juveniles we saw in our bag seines. And so again, just like with the spotted sea trout, this is a good indicator that the fishery will remain healthy. And looking at red drum angler catch rates, slight increase over the years. Red drum haven't had as many regulation changes as spotted sea trout. They've remained for the last 20 or 25 years or so at 3 fish per person in the 20 to 28 inch slot limit. And so it's just a byproduct of more fish being out there, and anglers are catching more of them. All right, now we can turn to flounder. Not so positive fishery in our bay system, and you can see since the 80s, flounder have been in a steady state of decline over the years. And this trend line kind of mirrors what we see further up the coast as well. It's kind of a coast-wide issue we've been trying to address. We've been very aggressive at increased regulations from to gigging or banning gigging certain times of the year, reducing bag limits, and then also recently this year we'll be completely closing the fishery for those spawning months, trying to give those fish a chance to spawn, and just trying to do everything we can to get these numbers back up. And unfortunately, it's not really an overfishing issue, but it's more of an environmental issue. So juvenile flounder have a much higher survivability during cold, wet winters, basically. So they typically, those juvenile flounder flounder spawn offshore. Those juvenile flounder will make their way back into the bay around February, March, this time of year, and that when we've had a cold, wet winter, when that water is a little bit fresher and a little bit cooler temperatures, flounder have a much higher survivability. And obviously, those cold, wet winters have been few and far between in recent years, and so I think that's one of the main driving factors for why we haven't been able to get flounder to rebound to those levels that they were at, back in the 80s. And again, looking at the flounder bag seine catches, kind of that same downward trend. Same issue, and again, this is coast-wide.
Jason,
Yes.
we have one question.
Yep.
Dan is asking, does sediment contamination contribute?
It's I haven't really seen a whole lot of literature down here as far as how much sediment contamination contributes to it. That I'm not sure of. Like from what I've researched and from what other fisheries managers, it seems to be more temperature and salinity dependent than anything.
Another question.
Mm-hmm.
Are spotted sea trout and red drum affected by water temperature like southern flounder are?
They are, but they have a lot higher temperature range and salinity range than flounder do. Flounder seem to have a very narrow range, whereas trout has a bigger range, and then red drum has probably the largest temperature range. They're a lot hardier fish. but yeah, flounder, especially those juvenile flounder. Once they reach adulthood, they seem to be able, they can tolerate a little bit more extremes. But the juvenile stage, it's a very narrow window that they seem to thrive in.
A follow-up question to the
Mm-hmm.
contamination rates. Diana asks, are they monitored?
We don't monitor it. We do. I know there's um, I'm not sure if any of the, like TCQ or if any other agency routinely monitors sediment contamination, but that's something that coastal fisheries at this moment does not do. We monitor the temperature, we monitor the salinity, we monitor turbidity, but unfortunately, we just don't have the manpower resources to monitor the sediments as well.
We have a question from Molly. Is the dissolved oxygen monitored?
Yes, yeah. Sorry, that's the last factor that's monitored as well as DO. Yep, we take your DO, we take salinity, and we take temperature, and we measure turbidity as well. And like we've modeled all those parameters against, modeled DO, we modeled temperature, we modeled salinity against what we're seeing in our flounder catch rates, and see if there's any correlation between them. And it seems like for whatever reason, or like what the literature shows, it's temperature and salinity are the more driving factors.
There's one more question.
All right.
I'm not totally sure I understand it, but is the center that is investigating raising flounder, are they focused on raising more females since the warmer water seems to lead to more males?
Well, I'm not sure on the details of whether or not they can. I don't think they can. I don't know if they're at a point where they can manipulate, trying to raise more one sex versus the other. I haven't been told any of that. As far as I know, they're just trying to get them to spawn and trying to raise as many as possible. Um, and and like trying to doing what we can to limit harvest of those fish, and those because the females are pretty much make up most of the harvest. Males typically don't even reach the minimum size that's required to keep a flounder. And it's a lot's unknown about them. Like we know the flounder spawn offshore, we don't know where flounder spawn. We don't know exactly where they do. We know the females come back into the bay, but there's a lot of they don't know exactly whether males come back in the bay or whether they just stay offshore or whether they die shortly after spawning. There's a lot of information we don't know about southern flounder. That's a lot of research institutes are kind of looking at too. Like the Heart Research Institute, I think, is starting to try and look at that. And I've been in talks with some of the professors here at UTRGV. Maybe trying to put something together for a grant or something one day to try and do some kind of tagging study to get more information about flounder spawning habits.
Thank you, Jason. No more questions right now in the chat.
All right. No problem. Yeah, I can't see the chat or anything at this when I got the presentation up, but so yeah, just feel free to chime in with any other questions. Oh, there it is. That was it. So no more questions for our anything about what we do and the data.
We do have one question that came up. Do
All
you
right.
take into account the red tide whenever you do your surveys?
Yeah, it's something that actually one of the biologists here is actually working on a paper on that, kind of showing the impact red tide has on our fishery or on the ecosystem. Basically, they did the kind of a similar study in Florida, and so he's kind of trying to duplicate that study here in Texas, and seeing just how much of an impact red tide has. And so it's something that we keep in mind, and it doesn't really affect our sampling. We still go out and sample, and because it's important, because if we, to make sure we are sampling consistently, that way it'll give us a clearer picture of just how much impact a red tide or this past freeze event, has on our fishery.
Very good. That was the last question there.
All right. And so we'll talk about, sorry, I'm getting an annotation request. Do you know what that is, Robert?
You can decline.
Okay. So we'll talk about a little bit about the winter storm that we had back in February. And I know you got, and I apologize if you guys already heard some of this information. I know that you had the Texas Master Naturalist Symposium earlier today, and I think they presented some information about this, but I just wanted to briefly cover it just in case not everybody had a chance to see that. So it was the largest freeze related coastal fish kill since the 1980s. And obviously the lower coast ended up being impacted the most. So breakdown, looking at historical freezes, you can see the December 83 freeze had 14.4 million fish. The February 89 freeze had 11.3. The December 89 freeze, so there was two big freezes in 89, had 6.2 million fish. And then the February 2021 freeze had 3.8 million fish. So compared to those, it doesn't seem as bad. However, this was still the largest freeze since these freezes. The freezes that we had in the 90s and 2000s were much less than this 3.8 million. So let's break down the fish mortality. So 9 game fish species consisted of 91% of the kill consisted of 9 game fish species. And so this includes species such as silver perch, hardhead catfish, pinfish, bay anchovies, and striped mullet. And then only 9% of the kill consisted of game fish species, which include spotted sea trout, black drum, sheep's head, sand trout, red drum, and gray snapper. So again, it was, coast-wide, the freezes from the 80s had twice the number of trout mortalities. However, when you look at the Laguna Madre, the kill was actually comparable to those freezes in the 80s. So the upper Laguna Madre and the lower Laguna Madre accounted for 89% of the total coast-wide mortality for spotted sea trout. And this number is actually the estimated number of trout mortality for both the upper and lower Laguna Madre. And so that's what led the Texas Parks and Wildlife Commission to enact some emergency regulations only for the Laguna Madre. So this includes from the JFK Causeway in Corpus all the way down to South Bay. And it also includes the Gulf of Mexico beachfront from the Packery Channel to the Rio Grande. And so these new regulations is going to be a minimum size of 17 inches, maximum size of 23 inches, 3 fish per person per day, no fish over 23 inches. So the regs prior to this regulation was 15 to 25 inch slot limit, 5 fish per day, and one of those fish were allowed over 25. So you see, it was a pretty significant increase in regulations, and this was implemented on April 1st of this year. and is valid for up to 120 days. So moving forward, we're just going to continue monitoring. Again, our gill nets, our spring gill nets, which we actually just started this week, is going to give us really the best idea of just what kind of impact the freeze had on our spotted sea trout and other species as well. So we'll get a chance to compile that data by the end of June, and then we'll bring that forth to the commission, and they'll reassess whether or not the regulation, the emergency regulation, needs to be extended another 60 days, or whether to revoke the regulation and go back to what they were. And so all that kind of is going to reside on what we see in our gillnet data. If it looks like it wasn't as impactful as we initially thought, then they'll obviously likely revoke it. But if it gets it back and it looks like it was, bad or worse than we thought, then they'll probably extend it. And they may also look at, other areas too that didn't look like they were impacted by the kill, but the gillnet data clearly shows that perhaps they were. And so the commission just decided to err on the side of caution, basically enacting these regulations and hold them in place at least until we get a chance to collect more data. And so just to kind of give you some, some perspective on how the fishery responded following those freezes from the 80s, and why I'm kind of remaining a little optimistic about the spotted sea trout fishery is you look at the freeze from December of 83. This was the spring of 84, saw that impact, and you can see it almost cut the number of the catch rate in half. But just a few years later, it rebounded very quickly. That's a good thing about spotted sea trout, is that within a year and a half to 2 years, they reach maturity. They reach adult size, and so the same thing from the 89 freeze. Just a couple years later, it rebounded again, and so hopefully we're hoping that that's what we see again this time around, is that if we do see a reduction in our trout this spring, that hopefully within a year or two it'll jump back up just like it did for these ones. Of course, the fishery is a lot different now than it was in the 80s. There's a lot more anglers out there now than there were in the 80s, and so obviously, and so it may not bounce back as quick. We're just going to have to wait and see what happens. But that was part of the reasoning why the commission also decided to enact these regulations, is just because we're not sure how quickly the fishery could bounce back, just because there's so many more anglers out there nowadays. So that's all I had for that section of the presentation. Any questions on the freeze?
There is one question, not regarding the freeze, but I'll throw this out there anyway. Has the SpaceX activity had any impact in the South Bay?
Not that we've seen yet. I know there was some debris found on the outside of South Bay, but I haven't heard of any reports of debris inside of South Bay at this point. But South Bay is one of the areas that we do sample every month, and so if we, if we see some issue, then we'll notice it and report it.
Very good. No other questions.
No other questions. All right. And so the last part of this talk is just going to talk a little bit more about the facility itself. So the property here where office is located is on approximately 30 acres. Consists of 18 ponds. The reason why there's so many ponds is because this property used to be part of a private fish hatchery back in the 50s and 60s. And then approximately around 1978, the property became what it is now, the Parks and Wildlife Coastal Fisheries Field Station. This station is open to the public. It's part of the Lower Coast Great Texas Coastal Birding Trail System, part of the South Padre Loop. So we receive quite a few dragonfly enthusiasts that visit our facility every year. It's hard to quantify just how many folks come, just because I imagine most of the people are here on the weekends when we're not here. But you can see it is a really nice facility. Um, this is our main office, right? And this is our garage that holds our trucks and boats, and then this is some storage buildings we have. But our property extends all the way out here, not out of view, and this way out of view as well. But this is the main area that the public has access to. So it's just kind of the shoreline. We do have a nice little observation deck right here. And I do have a video I'd like to try and show you of some more aerial footage that another biologist here at this field station took with a drone, and added some nice music to it too, make it look like a Blue Planet documentary. But let me see if I can get to play that.
For those of you that are asking where the site is, well, Jason, I'll let you explain since you drive there every day. But
So it's let me stop sharing this and see if I can share this video real quick. Can y'all see that screen?
Yes.
Oh no. Hold on 1 second. Let me try something else here real quick. I was worried this was gonna happen. I had it all set up and it doesn't work. All right, here we go. All right, yeah. So the facility itself is located just south of Omito, in between Omito and Brownsville, right off of 77, off of Fish Hatchery Road. It's actually the old Alice Road exit that you typically take to get there. And so you go down all the way down Fish Hatchery Road and cross some old railroad tracks and go all the way back, and then our facility is right there on the left of that road. But kind of what we were talking about is like, so we only have access to this little area here, and I was thinking, I always thought it'd be really nice to kind of clear these levees and have access to kind of walk up and down, at least some of these ponds, and maybe even put in some bird blinds at the end of the levees, and allow those birders to get even closer to the wildlife, because we do have quite a few water birds that frequent our facility. Lots of different herrings, kingfishers. We got wood storks that visit, roseate spoonbills. So you've got a lot of diversity, a lot of waterfowl too. And so it's kind of what I've been talking to Robert about, was kind of like, maybe if we can get a project to kind of, maybe clear some paths along these levees, and allow even more access for visitors and birders particularly. And because unfortunately, with everything we're responsible for doing this, this is kind of stuff we just don't have the time or manpower to really do ourselves. We've attempted to kind of clear this one. We made some good headway, but then when their busy season hits, like it is now, gillnet season, it grows up very fast, and so it's hard to really keep up with and maintain. But anyway, it's just something we had in mind, and if it's something y'all want to take on, then I'd be happy to work with y'all. And that's really it. All I have. Any further questions?
So for the members out there, so our hope, and Jason, you were going to check to see if this was okay up your channel, up your chain of command. But if you guys can imagine those ponds out there, and I mean, it's, Jason, remind me, they never dried out. So it's they have a overflow water source from the what do you call it? The irrigation canals that are out there. And so they've never gone dry, correct? Or at least not all of them.
Yeah, like I said, about 2 years ago, they almost did go completely dry, but that was because, like I said, we had a beaver that moved into the area and was damming up one of the main inflows that gets to the ponds, and we didn't realize it, and we finally realized it, and we were able to, you know, to remove the dam and allow the ponds to kind of fill back up, and they've remained full ever since then.
So this site is, as Jason mentioned, part of the Adopt a Loop project. And so this is already sort of in our scope of going out there and doing an inventory of the plant life, the wildlife, the birds that we see, and so forth, to be able to put this site on an ecotourism map. And so we already have sort of that project to go in and kind of help to do that. The potential project is to help clear out some of the plants and whatnot, that we could create a trail in and around some of these ponds so you have greater access. If you happen to have gone out there to do some of your birding, I mean, what we can see is sort of we're scratching the surface. I mean, we drove around what we could see and could see, all these birds that were out there. And it's like, man, if we could just get out there and we could see the birds that we cannot see. And so I think there's a lot of wildlife out there. It'd be great for the RGV, for Brownsville, for us to be able to sort of contribute to making this a showcase that it can be. I mean, if anybody can get a chance to go out there and look around, to create these trails to get in and around some of these ponds, it would just be fantastic, I think. And I think that's something, if Texas Parks and Wildlife allows us to do, which they have for other projects, then I think it's basically up to us to come up with a game plan to how to tackle that. Some of this may just simply be a lot of uh, shoulder work. Grab your saws and cut some of the debris that is blocking the way. Other things that are out there, the native plants, I mean, some of us will just have to sort of look at this and say, hey, this is actually really good examples of sables, of who knows what, and we want to kind of preserve what we can. We just don't want to go in there and bulldoze the whole thing just to get out there. So we want to do a little bit selective of pruning back and forth to try to make the trails come alive and preserve what's out there. Maybe there's something we can do with the cattails that may want to try to take over. Maybe there's something that we can do. Jason, what was that snail that you guys found that's an invasive snail species?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, there is an invasive apple snails that we've seen in the ponds. It's actually the first, I think, confirmed report of apple snails in the valley.
And one of the articles I shared with everybody on Facebook was a research, I think, by RGV students that were out there looking at that snail population. I mean, there's things that we could actually contribute to something bigger than just making it a trail for folks to go out to.
Yep, and I did look into I talked to my supervisor about it, and the only thing he said was just whoever comes out to help just needs to sign up through our volunteer management system, which many of you already are signed up with that, but if not, it's on our Texas Parks and Wildlife website, and you go to the volunteer tab, and you look for local listings, and you'll see the coastal fisheries Brownsville listing, and then you just I think just either I don't know if it says sign up or apply for, and then you click on that, and if you already have a profile made, then it'll sign you up and you'll be in the system. But if you don't have a profile, it will prompt you to create a profile, and it only takes a few minutes to do.
Could you repeat that?
Yeah. So on the Parks and Wildlife System website, the main website, you go to the volunteer tab, and then you'll search for the coastal fisheries Brownsville listing. There's already a listing on there. At least there should be. Last time I checked the other day, it was still up there. And so you'll just you'll click on that to sign up for, and if you already have a profile that you've completed in the system, it'll automatically include you. And if not, you'll just have to create a quick profile, which only takes a few minutes to do.
Jason, all of us as Texas Master Naturalists have profiles in that system because we use the same system to report our hours as Master Naturalists.
Correct. Okay, that's what I was thinking. I figured at least most, if not all of you, are in the system, so that'll make it even easier.
What we'll do from our end is sort of make sure that we have those instructions on how do we kind of register for your site. But the fact that we all have profiles, I think, will make it a little bit easier. From our end, we'll figure out what we need to do to create this as a project, get it approved from our end, and then we can hopefully come up with a committee from some of you that will be really interested, so that we can come up with a game plan, and then that way some of us may just be willing to go out there and contribute and tell me where to cut, and I'll dig this and I'll pull that. But we do want to go in there with an idea of what are our first steps. There's how many ponds, Jason? 18?
There's 18, yes. But right now, only those, those first 3 that you see there on the picture are pretty much accessible. But eventually, maybe we could create a trail that goes that allows you access to some of the other ponds.
And so we definitely can tackle these as step by step, conquering these first 3 ponds, and then spreading from there little by little. It certainly won't be a weekend's
No,
activity.
no, it won't.
And like Jason said, and like we know, the activity that some of you guys contribute at parks, including Ramsey or the Saca de la Palma, sometimes you create something and it's overgrown the next season. So it'll definitely be something that we can contribute, and I think it'd be great. Just a great site out there. And I'll post the directions on how to get there if you guys have a moment to just sort of go out there and take a look. What you see is fantastic. What we can create would be just amazing. I think that's what we would like to do. Any other questions for Jason?
I have a question. This is Kate. I'm not sure if you stated this already, but you said people could go out there, but like, do you just drive out there and park and walk around, or do you need to check in at the office or something like that?
Yeah, so there's no real check-in, but their parking is limited, and so there's some parking available over here, and then there's some parking available. It's kind of off screen here in another little parking lot that we kind of use, and so that's something we'll have to talk about as well too, because obviously we need to make sure we have parking for our employees, but there is potential, maybe we could make some more parking if it becomes a super popular site. Over here there's some room that you might be able to potentially add some more parking. But right now, yeah, there's no check-in or anything. You can just kind of come and go as you please.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome.
And Diana asked, are these freshwater ponds?
Yes, they're freshwater. There might be like some real small salinity, like maybe 1 or 2 parts per thousand, but for the most part they're fresh, and it's all freshwater fish that we've seen in there. Like there's some gar and carp and tilapia and armored catfish. Some small types of sunfishes that are in there as well. But yes, the address is 95 Fish Hatchery Road is the address for the facility.
And I think somebody, let's see, what was it? Yeah, Tira mentioned that this would definitely be a place for us to visit during the City Nature Challenge to help document what's out there. There's a lot of things. I wish that we had the trails there, because some of these, you certainly don't want to just venture into the brush to try to get to see what you can see elsewhere. So if you go out there, just be careful. There's that, you can just see that deck that they have, which gives you a really nice view across that middle pond. So hopefully you guys can go out there, take a look, and you can come up with your own ideas on how we can tackle creating these trails, and we'll come up with a committee to help come up with a game plan to get us started on that.
Yep. And we have seen some alligators out here too, just to let y'all know, and there is one good size one. We haven't seen them. Usually they show up in the spring when they're kind of in their breeding season. We get like an occasional male that wanders through here. They usually don't stick around long, and we haven't seen them. We haven't seen them so far yet this spring. But just to let you guys know about that as well. If you have a pet or something like that, just keep a lookout for them. If your dog likes to jump in the water.
Are those houses on the other side of the street?
Yes. So there's some residential homes just on the other side of the street. They go all the way back to Camp Lulu Sands. Which is now part of the IDEA Public Schools.
I believe that site is very close to that, what was Camp Lula Sam's. It's now that IDEA, whatever the name of it is. We used to go
Yes,
there.
ma'am.
Mhm.
Yes, ma'am. That's correct.
And looking at this picture, is that water in there in the ponds that's not dried out? You said they all have water in them. It looks rough or like it's frozen. Was this during the freeze or something?
No, it just happened to be a very calm day where there was just no wind. One of those rare days where you get no wind down here. That he was able to get this footage, and so there's just no ripples on the water at all. And so yeah,
That's cloud reflection then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then yeah, these are cloud reflections on the water here. Yeah, yeah.
Wow, it looked weird. Okay. I'm
It
very
looks-
familiar with that site if anybody wants to go birding. Just when we get past some of this migration stuff, because that'll mostly be water birds, right? Isn't that what you said? There's a lot of roseate
Yeah.
spoonbills and ibis and
Correct. Yes, correct.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Jason. Well, thank you so much for presenting to us, and I think this is definitely going to be a project that we can partner with and hopefully make it something really, really great. Thank you again.
All right, no problem. Thank y'all. Thank y'all for listening. And if y'all ever have any questions or concerns about what's going on out there in the Bay or out here at the facility, feel free to give me a call or email or anyway, stop by.
Well, excellent. Thank you, Jason.
Thank y'all. Y'all have a good evening.
Two.
All right, everyone should be able to see the presentation again. Heard one yes from across the room, so very good. Thank you. Okay, so thank you, Jason, again. And next month we will have Wendy Knight, Executive Director with Sea Turtle Link, coming to visit with us. So that's May 11th. So please make sure to go ahead and put that on your calendar. A couple of things we want to share is this Saturday we will be having our drive-through. This drive-through is to celebrate first our class of 2021 graduates. We have a group that graduated, some graduated with the certification already, and some have even completed their first 100 hours already. So fantastic. So this drive-through for the class of 2021, this is where you did your book pickup. And I'll show a map exactly where that is if you can't quite remember where it was that you guys joined us. At this event, we will also have the certificates and pins for everyone that reached a milestone since our last drive-through at Ramsey. We will also have anybody that wasn't able to pick up their pins and certificates and so forth. We will have them there for you as well. This information is posted on our website as well, in case you can't quite tell that I see my name there or not. I know Joni's been working hard to get everybody or to contact everybody to make sure that they're aware of their pins or certificates that are out there. We do have our 2020 Against All Odds pin. This is essentially recognition that 2020 was quite a odd year, and well, 2021 seems to be its twin, but We have a service against all odd pins in recognition that we still went out there and did our very best to contribute to attend AT and continue to advance our chapter. We will also have the members that recertified last year. The 2020 pin is the Bumblebee pin. So we'll have that for all of you that have recertified for last year. We will have our merchandise out there. We have these pictures posted on our website for everyone to sort of get an idea of what we have in stock. We will be posting the sizes that we have for each of these different shirts and whatnot, just so that you're aware of the sizes that are available. We'll also post the prices also. And if there's a shirt that you really like that we didn't have the size you're looking for, let us know as well, because that helps us get an idea of, well, what do we need to order, what do we need to do to replenish our stock. We will be meeting at the Master Gardener Educational Garden located in San Benito. If you're familiar with where we've had our chapter meetings in the past at the Cameron County Annex building, it's basically right across the parking lot. So this gives us enough space for a Saturday morning to sort of spread out, have you guys stop by, take a look at some of the different things, collect your pins. Hopefully we'll be out there taking pictures as well. So we have enough room to be out there and to be safe. Please wear your masks. We'll practice social distancing as well. We certainly don't want anyone to get ill for having this event. We'll start at 8:30, run until noon. And so hopefully that gives everybody a chance to stop by. I did want to share that we do have the April advanced training posted on our website. The various opportunities that we have identified are located out on our website. Let me know if you have any problems being able to get to it. On the top menu, you'll find a place to click that says Our, and then from there you'll see a drop-down list, and it's listed under Our Education. For the volunteer opportunities, we've added a new one, and that is the Adopt a Paddling Trail. Currently in our area, there is only one paddling trail that has been identified, and that goes from the Isla Blanca across the shipping channel to South Bay. So that is the only official paddling trail. And so we've adopted this service to be able to go out there and document it and make sure everything is still correct out on the website where visitors might go to find a trail to paddle on. However, we do have an opportunity to suggest new paddling trails. If some of you like to canoe, some of you like to kayak and have an idea of what would make an outstanding paddling trail for our region, let us know, because we can submit it as a trail to Texas Parks and Wildlife and hopefully get it approved, and we'll get the ball rolling. Each paddling trail does need a sponsor, but essentially we're looking at the Parks and Rec department of the city or neighborhood or what have you that is in that location, just to simply be able to have somebody say that, yes, we'll support our efforts. And then it's up to us to document exactly how to get there, the directions for visitors and so on. So that's a new one. If anybody has an idea for a volunteer opportunity that you would like to see, or you have something that comes to mind, let us know. We can do a little bit more research and find out how we can get it onto our list of volunteer opportunities. And again, as we mentioned, this trails at the Coastal Fisheries Station is one of the ones that we've been looking at for a while. Barbara and I went out there and met with Jason, looked at the site. This location is already on the Adopt a Loop project that we will go out there and support as part of the getting the site onto the ecotourism map. Essentially, imagine telling somebody, if you go out to this fish hatchery station, what will we see when it comes to wildlife? These trails would extend that even further. This is an old Google Maps. It kind of looks nice and clean. You can identify, you can almost look, hey, well, there's an easy way to get through those ponds to the other side. If you visit it today, it'll look a lot more overgrown, a lot more cattails in the water. You know, you really can't go too much further than the area that Jason pointed out where we would park and sort of go out there and look. What we want to do is if you can imagine, open up these areas in between the ponds to be able to get greater access to see what else is out there. I think there's a lot of potential, and not only do these efforts to create the trails, but then go out there and maintain them too. So we do want to sort of come up with a plan that can sustain itself, that we can go out there and periodically make sure it doesn't get overgrown, you know, by just the native plants that are out there, or definitely pull out any invasives that we see. It will also, like I mentioned, we want to go out there and take a look at what's there because we want to keep as much of the natives as possible, but then yet still figure out how we can facilitate a trail through there. So this is something that, again, we haven't officially approved it as a project that we will support, but again, we can support the site as part of the adopted trail. Hopefully the leadership team that's on the call can sort of look at this and already imagine what this project can do for our chapter and our community, so we can get it approved pretty quickly. So with that, are there any questions, any ideas? I know I saw a comment pop up, but I can't see the chat right now. So let me go ahead and stop sharing so I can see the chat. Let's see. I mean, anybody that wishes to volunteer, you want to throw out your name already, just put it out there in the chat. We'll contact you later. Again, to sort of come up with a committee so we can create a game plan on how we're going to tackle it. It might include a visit out there so that we can sort of see, okay, these are the first few trails that we want to attack, those first 2, 3, 4 ponds that are right outside the facility. And like Jason said, they had already tried to clear out some of that, but then when they get busy doing these monitoring events, there's nobody there to sort of keep the trails open. But now when they come back, well, we know the Wasatch is going to come back, all these different natives are going to come back, and they would need a group like us to be able to partner with them to keep the trails open year round. And so that's definitely something that we with. Let's see. One question out there, are the Adopt a Loop sites on the City Nature Challenge spreadsheet? I don't see the sites in Willacy County. Some of these sites, I'd have to go back and take a look to see if they're there. And Tyra, I
haven't added any. I haven't added anything from Willacy County because I wasn't sure what, besides Cameron County, I wasn't sure if I could add Willacy County. But if someone would just send me a list of the names, I can add them. Excuse me. I was a little afraid to make it have too many places because it seems a little overwhelming. Or I could make a separate sheets that's just for Willacy County, and so you can pick which county you're interested in.
I think there's maybe just 3 spots in Willacy County, and 2 of them are like really close to each other. They're out in Port Mansfield. I can send you the names.
That'd be great.
And
Thank you.
And we do have members that are up towards the Willacy County, so we would want to include it. And if you do live in Willacy County and know of a park or know of a site that would be good for the City Nature Challenge, definitely feel free to add those as well. Kate was mentioning the ones that are on the Adopt a Loop, but they're the ones that the state had already identified, but they're also willing to take in new locations that they think would be great nature tourism spots as well. Let's see. Diana let everybody know the reception for the Pelican contest will be, oops, just moving now, I lost it. Oh, we'll be at the Art Gallery in Port Isabel on May 8th. Time has not been decided on yet. And yes, we'll make sure to send it out on the listserv and on Facebook, the announcement on the Pelican contest. And hopefully at least be able to take a digital photograph to share with everybody what the winning image looked like.
Robert, if
Yeah.
we buy one of those patches, the chapter patches, and sew it to, you know, just whatever article of clothing that we have, would that count as like official? You know, we're supposed to wear our chapter shirts if we're going to volunteer somewhere. So if I sewed a patch onto something, would that count as like official chapter gear?
Yes, that'd be fine. By the way, there's one place that we know that some of our members go take their shirts to get embroidered with the Texas Master Naturalist logo and our name. I'm trying to think of the name. I think it's Chewy's off of Business 77 in San Benito. So if you have a nice shirt that you like, you can do the patch, you can get it embroidered. I mean, anything like that that will make you comfortable is definitely okay.
Cool, thank you.
Does anybody have any other questions or comments? They can unmute themselves if they wish. And I'll take a snapshot of the chat and contact everyone that was interested in the trails at the fish hatchery station. And hopefully we can come up with our committee and come up with a game plan for that. If there are no other questions, we will end the meeting for tonight. Thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll see you next month.